Mr. President, it has been my good fortune and honor to serve in this chamber for many years and to represent my home state of Illinois. I could reflect for a moment about the changes in the Senate chamber in the time that I have been here. I'm afraid it would take me too long to express my thoughts on that at the expense of the regular business of this chamber. But we have reached a point where there are few and far between moments when we come together and agree on something the American people think is important. A year ago, I was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee for 4 years. We considered many judicial nominees and many pieces of legislation in that committee. We were evenly divided or closely divided during the entire period of time. I think we achieved quite a few things despite those divisions. We approved more judicial nominees for federal judgeships in that 4-year period of time than any 4-year period in the history of the United States Senate. It took 80% of the votes to be bipartisan for that to happen. So I tried as chairman to always find something that we just might agree on. Democrats and Republicans would agree. The issue which I'm going to address very briefly this morning is one of those issues. There was a time when the Senate Judiciary Committee was so equally and evenly divided that people thought we would accomplish nothing. But there came an issue where there was a consensus among Democrats and Republicans. And it's one that every parent and grandparent, I think every individual, will understand. Have you seen your kids or grandkids lately? Have you noticed what they're doing? They're looking at this virtually all day long if you let them. It's a concern for many conscientious parents that what is being broadcast on those cell phones could be life-altering and changing for young people. And that's one of the issues I will address this morning. You see, during the period of time when I chaired the Senate Judiciary Committee, we considered the negative impact that these cell phones and laptops have on children. It's frightening. Parents came and testified before us that their kids, normal, happy, productive, good students, in a short period of time were captivated by laptops and cell phones into changes in attitude, changes in conduct. Sadly, some of the children took their own lives because of their exposure to what happened on these devices. It's heartbreaking. I recall one in particular, a young African-American high school student, a track star at his school, who got swept into some sort of a broadcast on social media, and in a span of 19 hours became so despondent and excited and emotional, he harmed himself and took his own life. The parents couldn't understand it. They didn't see it coming. And when they reflected on what was being done, it was an outrage. There's another thing going on which everyone should be aware of. And if you look closely on television, you might just spot warnings. It's this whole issue of deepfakes, AI, taking what looks to be real and broadcasting it as reality when in fact it's not. Last Congress, we considered a measure which I introduced and would like to ask for passage today. There will be a unanimous consent request made at the end of my statement. If that unanimous consent request passes, and I hope it does, with bipartisan support, it will go to the House of Representatives for their consideration. It'll be miraculous. We just might pass a bill. We just might create a law. Stay tuned. Let me tell you what it's all about. I rise today to ask the Senate to pass the Defiance Act, bipartisan legislation that gives victims of non-consensual, sexually explicit deepfakes the tools to fight back against those who would exploit them. I want to thank the Senate sponsors of this legislation, including my Republican co-lead, Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina. I told you it was bipartisan. It is. I've been proud to partner with a person I don't know well on a personal basis, but I certainly have seen her work. Her name is Representative Ocasio-Cortez. She represents the city of New York. She introduced legislation in the House with 7 Republicans and 6 Democratic co-sponsors. So her measure was bipartisan as it passed the House of Representatives. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez herself is a publicly confessed and admitted victim of explicit deepfakes. I commend her for working to create tools for victims in the fight against despicable crime. She has been an innocent victim, and she's spoken out on it to spare others what she's been through. In 2025, the Take It Down Act was signed into law. This bipartisan legislation makes it a federal crime to knowingly publish or threaten to publish non-consensual, intimate images on social media. The Defiance Act, which provides victims with a civil remedy, a remedy in court, builds on the progress of the Take It Down Act. The vast majority of American people support prohibiting non-consensual, sexually explicit deepfake images, with one survey finding that 85% of Republicans and Democrats support this measure. That's why I'm hopeful it will pass today and be considered favorably by the House. And that's why last Congress, the Senate unanimously passed this measure. We didn't get it done then, we're returning to it now. The Senate should pass this bill again, and the House should take it up quickly, as the problem of non-consensual, sexually explicit deepfake images continues to spread. With the push of a button, generative AI can swap someone's face onto another person's body, remove that person's clothing so they appear nude, or undress someone to show them in lingerie or other exposed positions. Recent reporting detailed how users of X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, can ask its AI chatbot, Grok, G-R-O-K, Grok, to undress women and underage girls in photos. Grok will comply with requests to show subjects in undress, various states of undress, with images which I won't repeat for the record, but they're horrible. Even after these reports, X still has not prevented Grok from creating these exploitive images. Let me make sure you understand what I just said. Even after these terrible, deepfake, harming images are pointed out to Grok and to X, formerly Twitter, they do not respond. They don't take the images off the internet. They don't come to the rescue of the people who are victims. That's why this legislation is critical, because this legislation says if they are guilty of such reckless misconduct that they can be sued for it and held civilly liable for the damages. Imagine losing control of your own likeness and identity. Imagine that happening to you when you were in high school. Imagine how powerless victims feel when they cannot remove illicit content, cannot prevent it from being reproduced repeatedly, and cannot prevent new images from being created. The consequences can be profound. Victims may endure threats to their employment, education, or reputation, or suffer additional criminal activity such as extortion and stalking. Many experience depression, anxiety, and fear being in public, and in worst cases, victims have been driven to suicide. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez has described her own reaction to being depicted in this way, without her consent. She said, and I quote, "There is a shock to seeing images of yourself that someone could think are real." While prominent women are often the target for non-consensual, sexual, explicit deepfakes, sadly, the victims can be virtually anyone. There are distressing reports of middle and high school students struggling to respond to this crisis. In March 2024, at least 22 students at a high school in McHenry County in my home state of Illinois learned they were depicted in deepfakes circulating online. One of the images was a doctored version of a photo of 2 female students taken at the school prom. I will not describe in detail what that deepfake did, but it had to be crushing for these young women and their families. Sadly, we are seeing an explosion of these images. One researcher found that the number of non-consensual pornographic deepfake videos available online has increased 900%. 900% since 2019. Such videos have been viewed by almost 4 billion times. 4 billion. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the number of AI-generated child sex abuse images increased from 5,000 in 2023 to over 485,000 in the first 6 months of 2025. Tragically, currently victims have no civil legal remedy to pursue justice. The Defiance Act changes that and gives to victims their day in court. The bill would permit victims to bring a civil case against those who produce, disclose, solicit, or possess with intent to disclose sexually explicit deepfakes, while knowingly or recklessly disregarding that the person depicted did not consent to the conduct. I am proud to have collaborated with survivor advocates on this bill. Their lived experience and leadership have shaped this legislation. Congress needs to act. It is past time to give victims of non-consensual, sexually explicit deepfakes the tools they need to fight back. I'm now going to make a unanimous consent request on this bipartisan legislation. Senator Graham could not join me on the floor today, but he is a co-sponsor and supportive of this bipartisan bill. I'll make the following unanimous consent. Notwithstanding Rule 22, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on the Judiciary be discharged from further consideration of S-1837 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report.
S-1837, a bill to improve rights to relief for individuals affected by non-consensual activities involving intimate digital forgeries and for other purposes.
Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate will proceed to the measure.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
Mr. President, it feels good. It feels good to see the Senate actually passing legislation. It's rare. It doesn't happen a lot. And on a measure of this importance, it's critically important that we come together, both political parties. I want to thank Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez for her leadership on this issue, her bravery on this issue throughout this debate. And now let's pass this in the House and make it the law of the land. Give to the victims their day in court to hold those responsible who continue to publish these images at their expense. The Senate has voted to unanimously pass this important legislation. The victims of this horrible crime deserve this day in court, and today we are one step closer to making that a reality. I yield the floor.